Okay. I don't have it this morning. Well, oh, here it is. Eracism is the slogan of the group Erace, which was formed in New Orleans in the summer of 1993. We seek ways through person-to-person communication to show that we are committed to treating fellow human beings of all colors with love and respect. Join us. Okay, I just want to go over some housekeeping rules. There is, at the bottom of the screen, there is a mute button. We'd like everybody to mute themselves unless they're speaking. There's also a stop video. If you need to, for whatever reason, stop the video and show a blank screen, that's at the bottom. There is also a chat box where you can put comments. You can change your name in the chat. Is it the participant screen? One of them, which, wait a minute.
If you click in your own, at the top right of your own little picture, there's 3 buttons and they let you change your name there.
Yeah, you can change your name. You can also put comments in the chat. You can raise your hand, I believe. Is it in the chat that you raise your hand? You're muted, Phyllis, can't hear you.
Yes, I am. It's on your, nope, it's not there. It might be under participants.
Participants?
Yeah, you raise your hand under participants.
You can raise your hand in participants. Okay,
I think.
Okay. So, meeting rules, okay? You raise one finger to get on the list, kind of move it around so that I can see it. I'll be scanning for it. If you want to ask a clarifying question of the speaker, you raise 2 fingers, you know, move it around so that I can see it. A clarifying question is basically, I didn't understand what you meant when you said, or could you please clarify and explain what you meant by. It is not a place to make a statement. We respect the speaker, no personal attacks, no name calling. What else? No profanity. At any time, there's no crosstalk. We can say point of order, and point of order means everybody stops talking. And we go back to the list on the progression of who's on the list. Okay. At the 15 minutes before the end of the meeting, we will begin our wrap up. During the meeting, please keep your comments to about 2 minutes, and I will be keeping time. During the wrap up, you will have a minute to give your final thoughts. Okay. I think I covered everything. I'll leave anything out. I need to rewrite this. Okay. And so at this point in time, we are recording. So remember that you're on candid camera. Okay. There used to be a show back in the day called Candid Camera on Sunday night. Everybody used to watch that. The reason that I brought this topic was during our evacuation, we were in Birmingham, and we went to the Civil Rights Museum. We also went to the Equal Justice Institute in Montgomery. And also during that time, we were staying in Airbnb, and I watched a documentary on Netflix called Amend. And Amend is about the 14th Amendment. It's very interesting. It is hosted, but if you have Netflix, I highly recommend it. And Will Smith narrates it, but there are a lot of other people who participate in this 6-part series about the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment was created because even though the slaves were free, they were not treated as equal citizens as a result of the Dred Scott decision that said African Americans were not full citizens and only comprised 3/5 of a person. And the 14th Amendment gave citizenship to anyone who was not only citizenship, but equal protection under the law to anyone who was born on the United States soil. So what this series does, it talks about how many exceptions or ratifications to the 14th Amendment that have had to be done over the years according to women, same-sex marriage, also the question of birthright citizenship. Now, there are pros and cons to birthright citizenship, if you read this article and you see that, there are different arguments about who is entitled to citizenship in the United States. Some say the 14th Amendment doesn't specifically state that, others say it does. It depends on how you look at it and how you interpret it. So anyway, the series left such an impression upon me that I looked for issues on birthright citizenship to discuss today. So with that being said, we have to go around and introduce ourselves too. So let's start with Phyllis.
Hi, I'm Phyllis. I've been coming to Erace since 2008, and I survived Hurricane Ida.
Yes, she wrote it out.
I wrote it out, and I regret every minute of it.
Nora.
Hi, everybody. So I'm here in Austin, and I'm wanting to help Michelle and Louise and anybody else start our Austin chapter of Erace, and I'm enthused about that.
Thank you, Nora. Marva?
I don't know why Marva disappeared, and I have a jail number.
Oh.
Marva, that's the passcode that you use to log on.
Oh, yes. And I survived Ida. I stayed at home, but I regretted it. We were 9 days without electricity. So glad to be back.
Thank you. Marion?
Hi, everybody. It's me. I didn't stay in the house. I went to my sister's house for the Hurricane Ida with my grandson and my grandson, Lord have mercy. My son and my granddaughter. And I think I still have jangle nerves. I don't know why. But anyway, just glad to be here. There was no power in the house, so of course I couldn't stay here, but my brother-in-law got a generator. And that's how we were able to survive, because it was so hot in my house, you could roast several turkeys. So that's why we had to go over to my sister and my brother-in-law's house. But glad to see everybody. And I hope everybody's doing well. And it'll take me another week to, I guess, get my feet back on the ground.
Thank you, Marion. Glenn?
You can hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, Glenn Abdullah. I survived the Ida. It wasn't, for me, it wasn't that bad. Didn't have any electricity, but it wasn't 1/10 as bad as what Katrina was. So That's how I look at
All right, thank you, Glenn. Michelle?
Hi, everyone. I'm so glad to know that all of you survived Ida because I have been wondering how you guys have been doing. So hopefully just with a few maybe hiccups, unfortunately. But I'm Michelle, I'm in Austin. And as Norda said, she and I and Louise are trying to get an Austin chapter started. So I've been coming to Erace since August of 2020 and I've been enjoying it. So thanks everyone. Look forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Michelle. Dee Dee?
Hi, I'm Dee Dee. I'm in California, and I'm totally happy to see all of your faces because we saw in the news, and even though the news has a tendency to blow things out of proportion, it still looked bad. And so I'm just really, I was praying for all of you that you survive with as minimal damage as possible. And so I'm just glad to be here with all of you guys.
Thank you, Dee Dee. Pedro?
Yes, good morning. I'm in Austin and been coming to the Erace meetings for about a year now, I believe, and really find them illuminating and helps me get centered on my own work around social justice issues and such. So it's good that you all survived the hurricane, and I'm sure our group would be bigger if there was no hurricane. So anyhow, glad to be here.
Thank you, Pedro. Bill?
I'm Bill Ives, and we were lucky in that we were in rural Washington State when the hurricane hit. And like everybody else, we lost power, but we delayed our return until the 13th, and the power was on when we came back. Our house was fine, but we lost a fence that we had just built for $5,000 because Zeta had taken out the previous one. So now we're rethinking about how we do a fence, and an enormous tree branch fell into our yard, but it missed the garage and it missed the house and it just landed in the yard. So it's just a chainsaw job. So we were very lucky, and we missed all of you guys, and we're so happy to be back together.
Thank you, Bill. Cindy? You're still muted. There you go.
I must have pushed the button 5 times. I'm sorry. My fingers aren't working, I guess. We had a great vacation visiting my son and Bill's daughter, and I felt bad for you guys. We sent you lots of warm wishes because we were in a really lovely place and very comfortable. But it was really good to get home. It got extended almost 10 days. So it's good to be back.
Good. Thank you, Cindy. Rebecca?
Well, good morning, everybody. And I think you're really making pretty light of that terrible hurricane, since my son and daughter-in-law were also there during Ida. And the description of the wind and the rain is really horrendous. So I do really feel for all of you. And I just wanted to say that. So I want to thank you too for choosing this topic. I think it's really an interesting topic to discuss, and I can't wait for the discussion. So thanks very much. I'm from Boston, but I can't imagine starting a group here, but I'll try to think about it. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Lynn?
Good morning. I'm Lynn Frank here in New Orleans. stayed in New Orleans rather than evacuate because I didn't want to go to our neighboring states where they don't believe in COVID protection and as much as we do, or if at all. And also all the expenses. And the third reason is it came up so fast, my refrigerator was not ready. And I couldn't leave until I had emptied it. And by the time I emptied it, the hurricane had come and gone. That was foolish on my part. I should have emptied it all along, but with COVID, I tried to stock up. So caught in the middle of a dilemma. And after a day or two of heat, I realized I can live with this. I can cope with this. So thank goodness that New Orleans was spared the worst of it. And I hope and pray that our neighbors in the other parishes will find solace and rebuilding as quickly as possible. It's good to
Okay.
see everyone again.
Thank you, Lynn. Louise?
Hi, I'm Louise from Austin. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Francine?
Hi, I'm Francie. I'm also in Austin, and I thought of you New Orleans people a number of times during that awful storm. I'm glad to see you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Leonetta?
Good morning, everybody. I stayed here with my dad because where we were going was where the storm was going, and he ended up in the hospital. He's home and he's okay. And Nancy, while I have the floor, I have a question. Is that law that if you're born in a country, do you automatically become a citizen? Is that a law worldwide, or is that something unique to the United States? I just
No,
want
the citizenship to a country is unique to that country. It is not worldwide. And in a lot of countries, only certain people are considered, it's not birthright, and you have to apply for it. I can't really speak for other countries, but the United States, that is part of what the 14th Amendment was about, specifically to give a grant citizenship to the freed slaves. And since then, it has been used, for a lot of different reasons to say that certain people born in this country should not have citizenship due to certain wording in the 14th Amendment. Greer?
Good morning, everybody. I
Good
was
morning.
watching, I think it was on Vice, where since there's a lot of Africans migrating to Italy, that even if one of your parents is Italian, you still don't automatically get to be an Italian citizen. And also I saw a documentary called Left by the Ship about the Philippines and how like a lot of soldiers there left kids behind. And if your parent, the American citizen, if they don't claim you by 18 years of age, you can't become a citizen of America, which is crazy. Everybody else who came and had set up military places there, even in what Vietnam, they took Amerasian kids, even if they just looked, it didn't have to be where a parent had to vouch for you. But because when they increased the rent on Subic Bay, America and the Philippines got into sort of an issue about that. So that's why they're making it hard for Philippine kids who have American fathers to actually become citizens. That's it.
Okay, well, thank you, Greer. We were just kind of going around and introducing ourselves, but I guess you will be the first person on the list. So now the list is open. Okay. Bill.
I actually had a question for Greer because I know in the EU, and I have friends who are of
Marva.
Italian and also in terms of Greece, Greek connections. And if your grandparents were Italian, then you can have dual citizenship with Italy and the EU. And my friend who was pushing this so that her son could have EU citizenship. So I wonder if what Greer observed is discrimination against Africans, because my experience has been if you're white, you can get, and you have ancestors in Italy or Greece, you can get Greek and Italian and EU citizenship. So I guess that's kind of the form of a question. I have a lot to say on this, and I really appreciate, Nancy, that you get it. It's a very complex issue, but I'll refer the rest of it till later.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Marva?
I'm glad Greer brought this subject
Phyllis?
behind, and Nancy selected this article. My notes says war babies. America has a history of leaving war babies behind, and it's documented in such documentary shows of history that they have taken advantage of the native countries, women especially, and they wanted to get their groove on. The soldiers thought that was a war right, being served sex on a platter by the native women of that country. And I feel sorry for those left behind, the war babies. And I think America and other countries, other leading countries, should address that. Thank you.
Phyllis and then Marion.
Well, I don't know if I ever heard the term sex on a platter before, and I'm going to try not to visualize that. But I will say the problem is a lot of war, one of the weapons of war is often rape. And so let's not forget that. And even, and women of the country that's been invaded being forced into sex work against their will for the conquering army. And this is historical, not just current and not just America. I want to say I haven't read this whole piece, sorry, Nancy, but I was looking at the Con 3, which was quotes from an article by our formerly not beloved Senator Vitter, who makes me want to throw up a little bit in my mouth. And it just is this language he uses that's so like, oh, the poor ladies being forced to come here and have babies in shady conditions. But he claims to be pro-life, but there's a limit to whose life he's pro. And that whole the whole thing with Texas, sorry for the Austin people, I'm mad. I'm sure y'all are too. And there's just so much BS that they try to say they're pro-life when really they're pro-control of women. And the words that Vitter uses here are examples of that sort of, I don't want to say, like, I don't know what the right word is, but like they try to spin things in a way that sounds like they're moral and they're upstanding, but they really just don't want brown people in the country. That's
Oh, yeah.
really what it comes down to. So I'm sure I probably overran my time. Sorry.
No, you actually, there you go. Did very well. Okay, we have Marion and then we have Bill. Anyone else like to be on the list? Okay, Marion, you have the floor.
Okay, I'm stepmother to two girls, well, they're ladies, whose mother was Filipino. She's been dead now about 20 something years. I was married to their father, who's also deceased.
Glenn?
One girl was born here. The younger girl was born here. The older girl was born in the Philippines. And when her dad, my now deceased husband, came back from the Philippines, he was in the Navy. He was married to the lady. He had to leave them behind. And it took a long time for them to get to this country. They really had a terrible time. The older girl, who was born in the Philippines and was left behind, is in her 50s now, and she's still not a citizen. They also have an older brother. His father was not my husband. His dad was from the Philippines. I don't know what happened to him. I think he died. But it is the craziest thing. My stepson will go to the immigration office every 6 months or so and try to get his sister's status updated. And it is very, very difficult. So as I said, repeating myself, one sister was born here. The older sister was left behind, and then when they got her here as a little girl, and here she is in her 50s, and she's still not an American citizen. And I just don't understand it. She doesn't have a criminal background. She's a good citizen. She's able to work. I think she has to go ever so often to have her status, what is it, the green card updated. But I don't know how long this is going to take.
Marion, would you like to get back on the list?
Oh, I'm done. That was a quick 2 minutes.
Yeah, 2 minutes goes by quickly.
Yeah, I was
All
getting
right.
wound up too.
Yes. We have Bill, Glenn, and then Phyllis. Would anyone else like to be on the list?
Stepping back to the bigger issues, first of all, the cons read like the racist all-stars. You got Steve King and Ted Cruz and Rush Limbaugh on that right-hand column. And I glanced at what they said. But the bigger picture here is our broken immigration policy. When the 14th Amendment was enacted, as Nancy said, it was not to deal with immigration. It was to ensure that the slaves would be treated as citizens. And we all know that offered some protection, but it's still a struggle. It's still a struggle today for African Americans to have full citizenship, as we know in states like Texas and Georgia. But the big picture is we shouldn't have to have this, because the parents should have a path to immigration. When the 14th Amendment was enacted, most immigration was from Europe, and there were really no barriers. And it wasn't until people of color started to come to this country that we put up these barriers, first with the Chinese Exclusion Act. They wanted the Chinese to come work on the railroads, which was a very dangerous job, but they didn't want them to be citizens. And now the exclusion is against people primarily from Latin America, but other countries too. And it's directed at people of color. So this just exposes the racism in our immigration policy. And so anyway, that's the bigger picture. I see Glenn has a question for
He
me.
has a clarifying question. Yes, Glenn.
Yeah.
Did you say that African Americans in Texas still today don't have full citizenship?
Well, there have been voter suppression laws that are directed against African Americans to limit their ability to vote, which is a key aspect of citizenship.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Glenn and then Phyllis. Would anyone else like to be on the list? Okay, Glenn. Lynn, did you raise your hand? Yeah, okay, Lynn. All right. Glenn,
I don't think that America don't want Black people to come into the country. In fact, you ain't supposed to be making no comments.
I know you heard that.
Yeah, you know, we heavily depended upon people from India. And these countries where Asians are coming out of, that Asians are coming from America, some of these countries now are getting better, where these Asians gonna go back to live. And you will see with other countries' experience, America gonna experience a brain drain. When you go see on TV all these medical doctors who are talking about COVID, you see they're Asians. They're from India and from other places. Who is running the vital city in our city? You have Asians running it. Sewage and Water Board and all these other things. So it's going to be, America needs people of color because they're living off of their brain. That's it.
All right, thank you. I have a clarifying question. Okay, the people come to this country from other countries and they go to school here, they get jobs here, but they're still not citizens. And so that's the difference. Well, that's a clarifying question. Do you think, wait a minute, I gotta stop. Too many duties at one time on a Ida fatigue brain. Do you think that America is willing to have people come from other countries to use their labor and their knowledge and their resources, but yet is reluctant to grant citizenship?
Well, maybe so, but what America don't want is a country filled of people from other countries who don't bring anything with them but problems, who don't bring any education with them, who just bring, someone needed to be taken care of.
Okay. Pedro, we have Phyllis, Lynn, Greer, and then Pedro. Anyone else? And Rebecca. Okay, Phyllis.
First, I want to say it was pointed out to Louise earlier, and I'm speaking on her behalf, that when she speaks, it's really loud and it hurts some people's ears, and she's feeling a little silenced right now. So I just want to say, if she speaks, just turn down the volume on your own computer. She can't really do anything about it. She tried, doesn't know what the issue is, but let's not make somebody feel silenced.
Okay.
The other thing is, Dr. Fauci came from immigrants too. I'm going to say that. Could comment on Glenn. Sexiest man alive this year. Um, so I definitely think our immigration situation is problematic, not in the way some people might. I feel like I'm a more the merrier kind of person. And I know there's some people who are really hostile about the Afghans who are being resettled here after we basically spent 20 years destroying their country and then giving it back to the people that we were hoping to get rid of. That's just unforgivable for me. Like we owe those people, especially the ones who worked with us and risked their lives to do so, and worked with other countries as well. So, you know, I know Afghans who've been here a while, and you know, they a lot of times they're not coming in just sitting on their laurels, or they're like getting educations and they're becoming professionals. And that's what we need. And we need Americans to do that too. But the more educated our whole population is, the better off we are as a country.
Okay, thank you. Marion. Let's see, we have Lynn, Greer, Pedro, Rebecca, and then Marion. Clarifying question. Okay, Marion has a clarifying question.
You got to unmute, Marion.
All right, Phyllis, do you think that there are some people in the United States that may be having a little difficulty separating the Taliban from the regular non-Taliban Afghan citizens who want citizenship here?
Maybe some. I haven't heard that as an argument about anybody, used. I think there's people who just don't want any more brown people coming here. Yeah. And I think Leonetta has a clarifying question.
My clarifying question is, aren't the same people that are complaining about the Afghans not wanting them here, are those the same people that are complaining about us leaving and all of that?
About what?
About the people that are complaining about the Afghans coming here. Are they the same people that are complaining about us leaving there and how we left, you know, that whole.
No, I don't think it is the same people. I think there's a lot of praise for how we left from one side, and maybe it's the praisers who are not wanting so many Afghans resettled here. But I think the people who criticize it aren't the ones necessarily saying they don't want them to come. That's my take on what I've seen. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Next we have Lynn. And then Bill.
That Bitter's argument is so typical of right-wing people. He proclaims that all the people who are coming here are wanting to have anchor babies to allow them to stay here and become American citizens. And the introduction to the article explained very clearly there are only about 36,000 babies who were born to women who came here deliberately to create American citizens. They were involved in birth tourism, particularly from China. They had the wealth to do that. And the other 200,000 or more people who came were either desperate for jobs and eating, survival, or escaping violence, gang violence, death squads, political violence in South and Central American countries, fomented in large part by our own government. But a typical right-wing argument, he only focuses on the sensational aspect to make his point. Americans may think that they don't want helpless people coming across the border to be taken care of, But in fact, the people who make it across the border are very energetic and very motivated, or they wouldn't have made it, because it's not easy to cross jungles and deserts and raging rivers and kidnappers and bandits and everything and even get here. These are energetic people. And while they may not have an education, they're going to push their children to get one. And some of the most productive parts of our society, look at the Vietnamese in our city, are the children of the immigrants who got here. So these are motivated people, and they are going to add to our country. And I wanted to comment on American bureaucracy. Some of the Afghans translators and construction workers and others who helped us there have been waiting for months and even years to get their paperwork. There's no excuse for that. And the stepdaughter of Marion, who's been waiting 50 years to get her paperwork. What is the matter with our bureaucracy? And why is our red tape so snarled up? The whole immigration system needs to be reworked from top to bottom, but we will never do it because it's such a good arguing point for Republicans.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. Cindy, do you have a clarifying question? You have to unmute.
Lynn, do you think
Marva.
Lynn, when you consider the mess that the immigration system is, how much of that do you think is deliberate on the parts of people who just don't want more foreigners to come into our country? Or is it just the reality of we need all those papers? Why do you think it's such a scrambled mess?
Well, I haven't done a study. I think a large component is people who refuse to look at the immigration issues. It comes up in Congress and it never gets voted on.
Right, right.
I believe it could be done better, but you would have to start over again. When people are creating papers, they don't get rid of the old papers. They pile new papers on top of the old ones. Those of us who have worked in the law or taught in schools, we see that layer upon layer upon layer of red tape. And so it's some of each.
Thank you. Lynn. Next I have Greer, Pedro, Rebecca, Bill, and Marva. Okay, Greer?
Oh, I'm sorry. I started talking when I first came in because I figured you guys had already started because I came in at 10:22. But okay, what I really wanted to say was there was the Hart Sellers Act in 1965 because mainly naturalized citizenship was granted to white persons in this country. So what this act did was it changed the laws to where it allowed immigrations of Asians, Africans, but it still gave preference to Western Europeans over Southern and Eastern Europeans, which I find ironic. But if you notice, Southern Europeans usually have more color. So they really did it, but there was still discrimination within it against even Europeans, and which I find ironic with allowing Africans in, but when Egyptians are granted citizenship, they weren't granted it as part of Africa. They were granted it as part of the Middle East. But you have Egyptian Africans who are Black. So when they come over to the country, they're automatically classified as white. And there was a Black gentleman who had to fight to get his color changed on his paperwork because everywhere he went, it said he was white, and yet they're looking at a Black man standing in front of him. That's it.
Thank you, Greer. Okay, next we have Pedro.
Yeah, I'm going to have to exit the meeting after
Phyllis.
comments, but thank you for the opportunity. One was, I'll put some links if people are interested, 2 shows on Afghanistan that we did with a Marine that was worked for the State Department and also for the Defense Department, and was in active combat, and very, very astute historian and such for some background information on a complicated issue. But I wanted to speak to the issue of the article. African Americans were brought to this country as slaves, and they created incredible wealth, not just in our country, but in, throughout the hemisphere for the British and the French and etc. Subsequent to slavery, I think the remarks that Lynn made are particularly really, really important, that our foreign policy in El Salvador, in Guatemala, in Nicaragua, and in
Honduras.
that part of the world, brought to power and kept in power the most repressive when Lynn says death squad, these are people that would maim you, kill you, chop bodies up, leave them around, kind of like these jihadist type people that we're now fighting. And so we created such terror in these nations and overthrew progressive governments in such a way that they're escaping this terror by coming to our country. So I think that's really left out of the discussion as to if you want to promote and have less people coming to the United States, don't destroy the abilities of these countries to have a civil and safe environment for their own population. And so I think that's really an important issue that's never looked at. Instead, it's just, oh, we can't take every person in the world in this country or our country would explode. It's like a super simplistic type of issue and such. And then just lastly, the reason we support those governments that are so repressive is in my studies is that so it can set up really underpaid situations. And Haiti has the lowest the lowest minimum wage type of issue. So these terrible governments promote great profiteering by the people that then give campaign contributions to these people that then write these deals about how we cannot take every person in the world into our country.
Pedro, would you like to get back on the list?
No, I got to go. Thank you all
Okay.
so much. I'm sorry I have a deadline tonight that I'm going to have trouble meeting. So thank you all. I'll see you next week.
All right, goodbye. Have a good weekend. Okay, next we have Rebecca.
Thank you. Well, it's such an enormous subject, this subject of immigration. And that's why I'm interested that we're talking about it. But one issue is there really may be a limit on how many people we can take into the country. And we never really discussed that from just an overall point of view, like how many people can we have on green cards? How many people can we have who live here, work here, but actually don't have a green card, but they're here in some way, other legal way? And my partner just told me that the Romans, when they attacked a country, they did try to kill the native sons and rape the women so that the children would be loyal to them. But another point was that the Romans decided that they could only support a number of people, something like 500,000 people. So it was clear that, and I don't know whether they had rules about which people they included in the 500,000, but it does seem like it's coming to the point where all of us in whatever country are going to decide how many people we actually can admit. But it would certainly be wonderful if it was, if there were rules that were followed about when a person could be a citizen, when they couldn't, and when they could be a legal resident with a green card and when they couldn't. And, that's sort of an ideal world, I guess. But how many people can we actually take care of in this country? So that's my only.
Can I guest speak?
Okay, thank you. I have Bill, Marva, Phyllis, and Greer. Anyone else?
You have to be an introduction.
I think this is just
Okay,
my
Bill.
opinion. To answer Becky's question, we have not come anywhere near the limit. We have jobs that we can't fill. And, but this issue is so complex. First of all, the number one anchor baby was Millennia, who was granted an Einstein visa because she was so skillful at something. And then she brought her parents in as an anchor baby into this country. But, and also to pick up on what Pedro said, we often, our foreign policy often creates the conditions that drive people to this country. In addition to the gangs in Central America, NAFTA destroyed the Mexican agricultural industry by providing cheap imports from the United States because we provided government subsidies to American farmers. So they could sell their corn on the Mexican market much cheaper than the Mexican farmers who didn't have the same government subsidies. So these out of work Mexican agricultural workers did not flood this country because they wanted to come here, but they lost their job. And ironically, they came to work in the industry that destroyed their job for much lower wages. And the other point is that there's a strong vested interest in having lots of undocumented workers because you can exploit those workers. They have no protection. There's no minimum wage, there's no benefits. And so a lot of people in the conservative powers that be want to keep undocumented workers. They don't want them to become citizens. They don't want them to vote, but they want them for cheap labor, just as they wanted slaves for cheap labor. And so this is our immigration system is such a mess. And one of the cores is the racism within it and with its configuration. And that's, if you look at it everywhere, it's designed to exclude people of color from all over the world, including the first one was the Chinese Exclusion Act. So anyway.
Absolutely. Thank you, Bill. Yeah, that's in that documentary, Amend. It was something that you don't hear about a lot. The Chinese, how the Chinese were treated, the Chinese Exclusion Act, how the Chinese, just like African Americans, were terrorized and lynched in this country in the late 1800s and early 1900s, 20th century. Yeah, the Chinese were too in Western states. And you don't really hear a lot about that in our history books. I have Marva, Phyllis, Greer, and then Marion. Anyone else? Okay, Marva. You have to unmute, Marva. There you go.
During President Trump reign, he was exposed by the national news media. He rented out rooms to Putin and his followers, rooms that they would transport women, Russian women, to stay in Trump Towers in Florida, where they would have doctor's appointments to get impregnated and establish OBGYN doctors as their medical caregivers, and they would get impregnated and they would return to the Florida to give birth to their babies, which automatically would receive citizenship. So that was exposed. He made illegal money off of that plan, and when it was exposed, I never heard follow up on that. Could Trump and Putin abandon that plan because America had its eye on that situation? Thank you.
Thank you, Marva. Next we have Phyllis.
Sorry, I'm trying to get my phone to open. I haven't watched this show yet, but it was recommended to me by Marla, who comes sometimes. It's a PBS show locally here in New Orleans on WYES. It's called America Reframed, Far East, Deep South, and she highly recommends it, and I'm gonna look into watching that. And I will say that not hearing about the Chinese Exclusion Act, I think it depends on where you are in the country, because when I lived in California, I was well aware of it. And because it was there. And I got to go to Angel Island in the San Francisco Bay to visit what was basically the Western Ellis Island, where a lot of Chinese immigrants were passed through on their way to being admitted to the mainland. I recommend that if anybody goes there. And the people like Vitter and Cruz and Limbaugh ad nauseum, all those people claim Christianity, moral superiority, blah. And it just makes me think of this quote by Stephen Colbert, which I'm going to read. And we can debate if the United States is actually a Christian nation, but it says, if this is going to be a Christian nation that doesn't help the poor, either we have to pretend that Jesus was just as selfish as we are, or we've got to acknowledge that he commanded us to love the poor and serve the needy without condition, and then admit that we just don't want to do it. So I think that's what really infuriates me, about the hypocrisy of these people, and especially in relationship to their alleged pro-life stance. They have a selective pro-life stance. And the fact that Governor Abbott of Texas just suddenly came up with the idea of eradicating rape, as if that's even possible, was horrifyingly laughable. And he does not understand how the world works. He's living in some kind of a bubble, possibly doing mushrooms every day. I don't know. But yeah, it's enraging. And I think the America I grew up believing in is America that helps people, whether it's American people or people from elsewhere. And we got lots of infrastructure needs worked on. The people can be brought in who can help refurbish houses that have been gutted, not just here, but in like Detroit. We could create housing for people. I mean, there's so much work to be done, and we're not using our own citizens, and we certainly are not encouraging a workforce or a volunteer force that could help really make America stronger. I'm not going to say better.
Okay. Thank you.
Bill has a clarifying question.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is kind of rhetorical, but Phyllis, would you say the pro-life people are really pro-birth and not pro-life?
I think they worship sperm. That's what I would say. And I think that they want to control women. And it's not
Yeah.
even pro-birth. They want to control women's bodies and what women do. And it's unacceptable because there are no laws like that for men. There are no laws that prevent a man from having bodily autonomy. Another question?
One more question. Do you see a similarity between the anti-vaxxers who said it's my body and my decision and the people who favor having control over their bodies to decide on abortion issues? You see an hypocrisy, I would say.
I think that the
Yeah.
anti-vaxxers who are saying my body, my choice are full of cow dung and need to stop using a slogan for something that is in no way relatable and actually makes them pro-death. They are pro-death.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Greer.
Rebecca raised a good question about what's the number of citizens a place can actually hold. And yeah, you have to think about resources and things like that. But another thing is also religion. Because if you think about the Solomon airlifts when they took Ethiopian Jews and brought them to Israel. Now Israel has an issue with having a lot of immigrants coming in that aren't necessarily Jewish. So you also have to take account of if you're going to call a place a Jewish state and the vast majority of the people aren't Jewish, that's another issue. And my thing was when they brought those people over, it was for a better life, but they treated them like second-class citizens, or still treating them like it. When they wanted to donate blood, they burned that blood. And there was also a sterilization process going on. And again, Bill said something about using numbers. When I was watching that issue with Vice, with the Italians, a lot of them are using African labor. They're taking their passports, having them live in houses with no plumbing, basically beating them plantation styles to get them to pick agriculture. I mean, exploitation is real, and we did it here, and I'm sure we're still doing it, because when people would work at meat processing plants, they'd bring in people from across the border, they let them work, and when payday came, they turned them into Immigration and Naturalization Service. But the thing that never happened was, okay, you brought these people over here knowing that they weren't citizens, but big business is never punished. That's another thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Greer. That's very true. Marion and then Phyllis, and then we're gonna go to the wrap up. Oh, Rebecca, you wanna go or you wanna save your comment for the wrap up?
You didn't hear me down.
I can save it for the wrap up.
Glenn, can you save it for the wrap up?
Yeah.
There you go. Okay. Marion and Phyllis, and then
Yeah,
go
this will be
to-
my wrap-up remark.
Okay.
I have had some memories triggered since we've been discussing this. Marva and Paul Schaefer and I met with two men from Afghanistan some years ago. Remember Marva? One guy was dressed in a suit and a tie, and the other Afghan gentleman was dressed in the traditional dress that we see on TV. And the young man in the suit and the tie was very expressive and verbal. I'm not going to go into the details, but I remember having that experience. But I don't know if Marva felt it, but the gentleman in the traditional attire was staring through Marva and me. And I guess he thought, well, how could these women have such verbal comments to make? As I said, this was more than 10 years ago. But it really stands out in my memory. Another thing is, real quick, I remember about the same time, Richard Spencer, who is of the same ilk as David Duke, was on WWL radio ranting and raving. And I mean, he was ranting and raving. This is the white man's country. And oh, he was the radio commentator had a hard time calming him down. And these people who think that they have as much citizens' rights as the white man are mistaken. And the commentator finally told him, if you're going to continue with this rant, I'm going to have to shut your mic off. But he was serious. He said, this is the white man's country, and everybody else should go and jump in Lake Pontchartrain. He said, much worse, of course. But not that long ago, ladies and gentlemen, and of course, I called WWL TV. I was able to get on the commentary, and I identified myself as a Black woman. He grew silent then. I could hear muttering in the background, but I said, I'm as much citizen as you are, sir, and I've made contributions to this state, nation, city, and I am an American citizen. So he didn't say anything after that, but he was really on his rant about this was the white man's country.
Okay, thank you, Marion. And Phyllis.
So I want to clarify in my mind what Greer was saying, that the Ethiopians who were taken to Israel were Jewish Ethiopians, and that did not prevent the Zionist apartheid state of Israel from treating them in the ways that she described, with sterilization and discrimination. And the same applies to Russian Jews who immigrate to Israel. So it's not the great democracy of the Middle East that everybody likes to believe it is. And I could spend a whole 2 minutes plus ranting about that. Yeah, that's all for this. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Okay, we're moving into the wrap up. If you have not spoken, you can take your full 2 minutes. And if you have already spoken, please keep your comments to a minute. So I want to start with Dee Dee, who has not spoken.
How did I know you were going to pick on me? I have totally enjoyed every word that's been said. This is a serious eye opener that, I mean, I live in California, which is, you know, as liberal as it gets. And we have issues, but we don't really have the awful stuff that you guys are talking about. And so this was really helpful for me to understand. I'm glad I got up at 6:45 this morning so I could get here on time. Because I'm more like Phyllis. I'm like, you know, we read the Statue of Liberty, give me your humble, your poor, you know, folks that are being beat down. And I have a tendency to stick with that. A lot of immigration issues come from folks that have never lived outside this country. They've never seen people get shot in the street for no reason. You know, and that is going on. And a lot of the things that are happening in Latin America are really horrid. And people get really desperate to get here just to be safe. You know, just to be able to sleep at night and not be awakened at night and shot in your bed. And so I needed to hear all that y'all had to say. And so thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dee Dee. Next, Nora.
Yeah, so I'm just embarrassingly ignorant of our history, politics, etc. And I'm partly thankful of that because I didn't learn a lot of the lies that I would have learned if I had been listening. But so I was looking over the 14th Amendment document and looking at section 2 of it, which is about guaranteeing the vote. And this says this section guarantees that all male citizens over age 21, no matter their race, had a right to vote. So, like what Marion, I think, was saying, there's still such a problem with it being a male supremacy that kind of is the umbrella over so many other issues. And I wonder why that wording has remained. Why we're not making a fuss over that. And maybe we are. I don't know, because my ignorance gets in the way. But thank you, everybody, for helping me with my current quest for educating myself. And I really appreciated the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Nora. Francie?
Well, this is quite a dense topic, and I'd like to suggest we revisit it sometime in the not too distant future. I had questions about what are open borders and what does that mean? And I guess I could research it myself, which this stimulates me to do that. I heard no discussion about open borders unless I was off on one of my missions and somebody spoke about it. I want to say that I really identify with a lot of what Phyllis was saying, and her remarks. This is a good discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Francie.
Sure.
Michelle?
Yeah, I don't really have much to say. I've just enjoyed listening today. And it is, I guess several people have said, it's a very complex topic to discuss. So many facets of it that we didn't even touch on at this point. But thank you, everybody, for your commentary, and I look forward to the next discussion.
All right, thank you so much. Glenn?
Yes, concerning immigration, I think it's going to take care of itself in that America has a very large aging population. They'll be out the workforce. You have to have people to replace them due to birth control and due to abortions. And the white woman decided that they only want one child. They're not doing their job anymore. So so it's going to take care of itself because we're going to need immigration to replace the aging population and the non-birth population. Also, just want to say that because a citizen get suppressed, some of their rights get suppressed, don't mean that they're not a full citizen, because any whites or anybody can be, some of their rights can be suppressed. It's not just African Americans.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. Rebecca?
So I just wanted to add that it horrifies me that there are 10,000 people at our border living in the most incredibly horrible condition. And I feel that there should be some pressure on businesses that profited from the policy of the first Bush, because they really destroyed the land for the people. So that's what's brought on this terrible push on our southern border. And I just wish that somebody would say, we've got to do something. We've got to offer reparations, is what I would say, so that those people can make a living at home again. And that's what horrifies me. And so I think that's my minute. Oh, and thank everybody it's a big discussion, and I do hope we discuss it again. So thanks very much.
All right, thank you, Rebecca. Phyllis?
Well, I just want to address to Glenn that I saw a report that hard plastics are actually affecting sperm motility. So we can't fully blame women's choice to not have multiple babies on women. And also, I think this was a really good topic, a really good discussion ensued from it with lots of different takes. And I want to say just to Dee Dee, I'll take an earthquake any day over a hurricane. Yes. There's no waiting. There's no week of is it coming? Is it not coming? Should I go? Should I stay? It happens. And then you just move on. So that's, if I could afford California, I'd consider coming back. Thank you.
We had one yesterday.
An earthquake?
Yeah. It wasn't that bad, but we had one yesterday.
Yeah. And if it's like a 4 or less, it's not even cool to acknowledge it, right?
No.
Thank you.
I learned something new there. Thank you, Phyllis. Marva. Unmute.
Good article, Nancy. Good discussion group. I was born in the United States 75 years ago. I don't know if national statements and songs and pledges was written for me. Truth and Justice and the American Way, the Pledge of Allegiance, the Star Spangled Banner, and much more. I question that. Thank you.
Thank you. Marion? Oh, Marion, you went, didn't you? You did your wrap up. Okay, thank you. Bill?
Two issues. So much of our foreign policy contributes to the devastation of countries, and then they want to come to us, like Afghanistan being the latest, but Central America being one of the more egregious ones. But I was just thinking of this. We have talked about a lot of topics, healthcare, education, and every time in voting, every time we talk about one of these topics, we see the incredible role that racism plays in affecting each of those issues. And now we're talking about immigration, yet another topic, and racism is at the core, in my opinion, at the core of the troubles with our immigration policy. So racism is just pervasive everywhere. And the more things we look at, the more things we discover. And I learned a lot from both this article and the discussion. I really thank you, Nancy.
Thank you. Cindy?
It's a complex issue, and I would like to see us lay out a whole series of talks focused maybe every other week or something, because the reality of where the immigration numbers are now, it keeps changing. I mean, I met travelers seeking asylum here at the bus station once a week for a year and a half. And they mostly are seeking economic asylum because their countries are so repressive or poor or horrible. It was very interesting, though my Spanish is not very good, to listen to what they are seeking. And it's everything that's written in the Bill of Rights and all this stuff that we say we follow. And when they get here, a lot of times they have a hard time because it's not a very welcoming country. Hopefully, we can reconsider those ideas and live accordingly. Parts of our country, and it's mostly the middle, the agricultural middle, is desperately seeking people. There were ads that were publicized in the last year of farm communities needing workers. So why aren't we letting more people in? Anyway, it was a valuable discussion. I hope we will put a couple of others soon.
Okay, thank you. Lynn?
The topic of the article was, should babies born in this country automatically have American citizenship? And we haven't really said what we thought, yes or
No.
no. And I'm
We
going to
didn't.
say, yes. I haven't heard any reason not to do that. And the people on the pro side of the argument mentioned the dangers of stateless people and mentioned the dangers of having an entire underclass of non-citizenship people in our country, because they can't get a citizenship because their parents weren't born here, and so on and so forth. And it sounds absolutely chaotic, inhuman, and the beginnings of something like the old Roman world, where more than half the people were slaves, and then the upper class lived off their work but didn't give them the benefits. So yes, we should keep the concept of birthright citizenship. And Marion, I agree with you. We have not yet accorded full citizenship rights to all of our citizens, especially citizens of color. And that needs to be worked on as well, at the ongoing struggle.
Yeah, thank you, Lynn.
Thank you.
Leonetta.
It was a wonderful article, lots of good discussion. I just wanted to make a comment about what's going on at our border. Glenn, I don't know if you agree with me or not, but I think an investigation needs to be looked into how all these Haitian people are getting to the border. I truly believe somebody is bringing them here. They got some ulterior motives behind this. And it's not just about what happened to that country. There's some kind of plot, a conspiracy or something that got all those people at that border from Haiti. And I think it needs to be looked into. I also agree that with several of the people, with Lynn in particular, that our immigration system is broken. I think I don't think it should be that complicated. There just should be a couple of rules. If you're born here, you're a citizen. If you're a war baby, you're a product of war, why you're a citizen. It shouldn't be that complicated to become to say who is and who isn't a citizen. If you take the racism out of the equation, it's not that hard. To set a number of limits from each country, to set the criteria, if it's economics, if it's break, if it's this, that, and the other, and put numbers on. It's not that complicated, people. And if you would take the racism out of it, I think it could be fixed. Thank you for listening. I'm getting off my soapbox.
Okay, thank you. Louise?
I agree totally with what Leonetta just said. And yes, I agree with what Lynn said as well, that immigration policies just need to be completely rehashed and redone. And yeah, Leonetta, what are the problems that are happening in the South American countries and Haiti and the islands that it's sending millions of desperate people to the United States? Surely, us as a nation, we should be looking into that and asking why all of these people are coming over, and maybe try to fix that problem, fix the problem instead of just put a Band-Aid on it, or, I don't know. And on a lighter note, I have a t-shirt that says Mid-City Refugee, but that was after Katrina. Anywho, great discussion. Hope you can hear me adequately, and I'll see you all next week.
Thank you, Louise. Greer?
We always talk about systemic racism. This is another part of it. These men, women whoever are against immigration, I guarantee you, their people came from somewhere else and they lack compassion. And as long as people bring their biases, their prejudices, and everything that ails them into making legislation, then we're going to always have racism impacting us in terms of what we're able to achieve as a country and what people are able to get access to. Great article, Nancy. I loved it. I think we need to do some more on it.
Oh, thank you. Okay, that wraps up our meeting for this week. All I want to say is that I think if you have access to Netflix, watch Amend, which is about the 14th Amendment that addresses the Chinese exclusion. It addresses women and the right to vote. And that one just kind of blew me away. But in reading the paragraph, I think Nora brought it up about they do mention male in there. Because this country was founded on white, male, Christian, heterosexual demographic. And if you didn't fall into that, they were not talking about you. It also talks about, what else does it go into? It goes into a lot, immigration, different, the classist, just like you don't want to bring people to become citizens, but you want people to come to do the work that you don't want to do. And then you don't want to grant them full citizenship, even though they come and they contribute to the country. It's still a classist society. So anyway, if you get an opportunity, if there's any way that you can watch it, please do. It's a 6-part series. It's narrated by Will Smith, but there are a lot of other people that participate. And it gives an explanation of the history of this country. Certain things, like Roe v. Wade and Brown versus the Board of Education and different rulings that have come from the Supreme Court and that have shaped this country. It's very interesting, very informative. So are there any announcements? We can stop.